say there's a room at the far end of the abandoned Suryanagar Research Compound, a place the government sealed off decades ago. Not because of what was built there, but because of what stayed. The locals call it the 7-minute chamber, the 7-minute room. If you die inside it, you come back exactly 7 minutes later, but not with your own memories. Every returner speaks a fragment of a language no one has ever heard before, a language no living person can translate, a language that piece by piece is teaching itself through them. Amit Verma had seen the Suryanagar compound from the highway dozens of times. A cluster of cracked concrete buildings surrounded by a rusting fence and a line of eucalyptus trees swaying like gossiping elders. It was the kind of place you drove past quickly without looking too long. But tonight, he wasn't driving past. He was inside, pushing open a door that should have been locked for good. The air in the corridor was thick with the scent of metal and old rainwater. His flashlight beam caught peeling paint curling like sunburnt skin. Somewhere in the dark, a slow drip echoed and then stopped mid-drip, as if the sound itself had been swallowed. He wasn't here by accident. 3 days ago, a friend from his university, Anaya, had sent him a grainy video clip. In it, a young man lay dead on a gurney in a room with rusted walls. A clock ticked in the background. 7 minutes later, his chest rose again, his eyes opened, and he whispered words that didn't belong to any human language. Anaya's message had been simple. This is real, and I'm going in. Come if you want proof. Amit followed the sound of his own footsteps down the corridor, though it felt wrong. The air was so stale that even sound seemed hesitant to travel. He counted 5 doors on the left, all bolted shut. On the right, only one door stood unsealed, at the very end. Its metal surface was painted the dull green of old hospital wards, with a number stenciled in faded white. B-17. The strange thing was, there was no draft coming from the gap beneath it. No change in temperature. It was as though the air beyond the door didn't exist. He reached for the handle. The moment his fingers touched the cold steel, a whisper pressed against his ear. Not from behind him, not from inside the room, but from inside the door itself. It was a sound like wet syllables, vowels stretched too thin, consonants chewed and spat back out. Amit jerked his hand away, heart thudding. From the shadows down the hall, another flashlight clicked on. Anaya stepped into view, her face pale, her eyes carrying that wired, sleepless look of someone who'd been too close to something they couldn't explain. "You heard it, didn't you?" she said. Amit swallowed. "What is it?" Her voice dropped low. "The first lesson." The hinges groaned as Anaya pushed the door open. The room inside was smaller than Amit expected, barely large enough for a hospital bed, a rolling tray, and a wall-mounted clock that had stopped at 3:17. The air was stale, but carried a faint scent of something scorched, like metal that had been overheated and left to cool. The walls were coated in peeling white tile, each tile lined with hairline cracks. Amit's flashlight beam slid across them, and for a second he swore the cracks formed letters, but the patterns dissolved when he blinked. "This is it," Anaya said, stepping inside. The Sapta Minute Chamber. How does it work? She didn't answer. Instead, she set her phone to record, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a black-handled knife. Without ceremony, she pressed the tip against the soft flesh of her forearm and drew it across in one sharp, deliberate motion. Amit lunged forward. What the hell? She was already on the floor, her body slack, her eyes rolled back. The clock above them clicked. 3:18. Amit's pulse roared in his ears. He crouched beside her, shaking her shoulder. Nothing. 3:19, 3:20, 3:21. And then at 3:24, her chest rose. Her eyes snapped open. She looked at him and spoke 5 words in a voice that wasn't hers. A language that didn't exist. Amit froze. The words still hung in the air, syllables that didn't fit in his ears. Like a song played backward, Anaya blinked, her breathing shallow. Then she sat up slowly, clutching her forearm. The wound was gone. Only a thin white line remained, as if the cut had been made years ago. What did you just say? Amit asked. I don't know, she admitted, her voice trembling. I can't even repeat it, but I understood it while I was saying it. Amit frowned. Understood what? She stared at the tiled wall, as if trying to recall a dream that was slipping away. It wasn't a word. It was a piece of something bigger, like a sentence I haven't finished yet. She turned to him, eyes glassy. And it didn't feel like it was mine. The moment I woke up, I knew. Someone else put it there. Amit's skin prickled. From where? She gave a short, humorless laugh. Not here. And not anywhere you could point to on a map. The clock clicked softly, though the second hand never moved. It's a language, Amit, she whispered. One that doesn't belong to us. And every time you die in this room, it teaches you another piece. Amit paced the small room, refusing to look at the bed for too long. You're saying this thing, this room, teaches you some dead language. Anaya's gaze sharpened. It's not dead. It's alive, growing. He stopped. Growing into what? That's why I came back. She stepped closer, her tone urgent. Every returner learns a different fragment. If we put them together, no, Amit cut in. I'm not dying for a riddle. The corner of her mouth twitched. You think you'll have a choice. Before he could react, she shoved him hard. His back hit the wall and her hand came up, flashing silver. A sharp sting ripped across his throat. He grabbed at the wound, choking, falling to his knees. Hot blood spilled over his fingers. Anaya knelt in front of him, her face unreadable. 7 minutes, she whispered. The world dimmed. Sound drained away. When he opened his eyes, the clock read 3:17 again. His skin was whole, but his mouth was already moving. Words poured out, a string of harsh guttural sounds that burned his throat as they came. And unlike Anaya, Amit understood exactly what he'd said. It was a warning, and it was for someone else. Amit's breath came in short, ragged pulls. The echo of the words still rang in his skull, not like sound, but like the afterimage of a flash burned into his vision. Anaya crouched beside him. What was it? He shook his head. Not for you, not for me. Then who? He looked at the wall opposite the bed, the one with the largest network of cracks. In the dim light, the fissures no longer seemed random. They bent inward, spiraling like a funnel. Something's listening, Amit whispered. Not through the door, through this. Anaya frowned. You mean the wall? No, I mean the thing behind it. As if on cue, the air grew heavier. The kind of heaviness that wasn't weight but pressure. The feeling of deep water above you. The cracks in the tile pulsed faintly, like veins. Amit took a step back. The warning. It was telling it to wait. Anaya's eyes narrowed. Wait for what? The tiles shuddered. just once, and stopped. Amit swallowed hard. For the rest of the sentence, Anaya's flashlight trembled slightly in her hand. If that's true, then the only way to finish the sentence is to keep dying. Amit finished for her. The idea sat between them like a third presence, something neither wanted to acknowledge, but both already accepted. Anaya broke the silence. I've done it twice before. Each time it gave me a longer fragment. It's building something, and it's using us to do it. Amit's stomach nodded. And when the sentence is complete, her gaze shifted toward the wall, where the cracks seemed deeper now, their edges dark like wet stone. Then, whatever's listening will understand, and it will answer. The thought alone made his chest tighten. So you're saying every death here is like a mouthful of food, she said quietly. We're feeding it the language it needs to speak back. The clock above the bed clicked. Neither of them had touched it. Amit took a slow breath. What if we just leave, seal the door? Anaya's voice was flat. Do you really think it can't finish the sentence without us? We're just the ones stupid enough to hear it first. The cracks in the wall gave a faint, deliberate twitch, almost like a nod. Amit pressed his palms to his eyes, trying to slow the pounding in his skull. Every time he thought about dying again, something deep inside recoiled, not from the pain, but from the idea of coming back less himself. Anaya must have read the hesitation on his face. You think you wake up the same every time, she said. But pieces go missing. Small at first, you don't notice, until you do. What did you lose? Amit asked quietly. She gave a strange smile, more like a wince. The face of my mother. I know she exists. I remember her voice. But her face is gone. Like I've never seen it. The weight in the air thickened. Amit felt it too. A subtle rearranging in his head, like drawers being opened without his permission. And then, it happened. For a heartbeat, he was somewhere else, standing in a crowded marketplace, the smell of roasting peanuts in the air, a woman calling his name. He turned and realized he'd never been to that market in his life. The memory wasn't his. When he blinked, he was back in the chamber, gasping. Anaya's eyes were wide. It's starting to share them, she said. Not just language, lives. From the wall, the cracks deepened, and a single tile popped loose, falling to the floor with a sound far too loud for its size. The tile lay face down on the floor, its ceramic back slick with something dark. Not dust, not mold. Amit crouched and touched it. His fingers came away smeared with a black viscous fluid that smelled faintly metallic, like rust mixed with blood. Anaya kept her flashlight trained on the gap in the wall. Tell me that's concrete back there, she whispered. It wasn't. Behind the missing tile was no cement, no brick, no insulation, just flesh. Not the pale pink of skin, but a deep oil-slick black that seemed to move with a slow, deliberate pulse. Amit's stomach turned. That's alive. From somewhere far inside that darkness came a sound, a slow inhalation, deep and patient, like something preparing to speak but holding its breath. Anaya took a step back. That's what we've been feeding. The pulse quickened. The cracks in the surrounding tiles deepened, spiderwebbing outward like fractures in ice. And then the breathing stopped. In its place came a single deliberate knock from the other side, too rhythmic, too human to be an accident. Amit's skin went cold. That was a word. Anaya's voice was barely a whisper. It wants the rest of the sentence. The knock echoed in Amit's bones, reverberating in a way that made his teeth ache. He backed toward the door, but the metal handle was ice cold under his palm, colder than it should have been in this stagnant air. It didn't turn. Anaya was staring at him with a strange stillness, her pupils dilated. "Amit," she said slowly, "it's not asking anymore." Before he could ask what she meant, the air in the room shifted. It wasn't just heavy, it moved, pressing inward from all sides like the closing of a fist. Amit's knees buckled. He felt it then, a sharp pressure inside his skull, like something rifling through the drawers of his mind, looking for the right key. His vision blurred. The wall seemed closer now, the black flesh behind the missing tile rippling gently, almost inviting. "Amit, don't," Anaya started, but her voice warped, bending around the edges of his hearing. His feet carried him forward without permission. The last thing he saw before the darkness folded over him was the clock above the bed. It clicked from 3:17 to 3:18. When Amit opened his eyes again, he was lying on the bed. Anaya stood over him, trembling. "You were gone for less than a minute," she whispered. "But you spoke a lot." Amit sat up, his throat raw. "What did I say?" She swallowed hard. "Not in any language I know. But I think you finished the sentence." From the wall, the thing behind the tiles exhaled, and this time it was smiling. The exhalation wasn't air, it was heat, damp and sour. It rolled into the room in a slow wave, coating Amit's skin like the breath of something leaning close enough to taste him. Anaya took a step back toward the door, but it didn't matter. The air between them and the wall shimmered faintly, as though the space itself had become liquid. Then it began. Not sound, not exactly. The tiles quivered, their hairline cracks widening as if they were mouths parting in unison. A low vibration thrummed through the floor, climbing up Amit's legs into his chest. And in his head, in the private, dark place where thought should have been his alone, came the reply. It wasn't a word, it was an image, a memory that didn't belong to him. A sprawling city of black stone under a sky with no sun, people walking without faces, doors opening into rooms that bled light like water. And far above it all, a presence leaning down, its mouth forming the same sentence he had just spoken, but in reverse. Anaya's voice was distant, trembling. "What is it showing you?" Amit's mouth was dry. "Not showing," he said slowly. "Inviting." The wall pulsed once, and a second tile dropped to the floor. Behind it, more of the black flesh waited, and this time it had begun to reach. The second tile hit the floor with a sharp crack that seemed to echo inside Amit's ribcage. The black flesh behind the wall flexed, and from it protruded something thin and jointed. Not quite a hand, not quite an insect's leg, but something meant for grasping. Anaya stumbled back until she hit the sealed door. "It's coming through!" The thing's movement was deliberate, patient. It scraped along the broken edge of tile, testing the air like an animal sniffing a new scent. Amit felt the pull before he saw it, a pressure behind his sternum as if invisible threads were hooked into his bones. His legs moved a fraction closer to the wall. He fought it, planting his feet. "Anaya!" Her flashlight beam shook as she swung it toward him. Her pupils were blown wide. "It's not pulling you, it's calling you!" The fleshy limb withdrew slightly, then pressed forward again, leaving a faint smear of black on the tile. The smear wriggled, splitting into lines that curved into shapes. Letters. Amit recognized them instantly. The sentence he'd spoken. Only now, it was changing. Anaya's breathing quickened. "It's rewriting your words!" The wall pulsed, and the pressure in Amit's chest tightened until his breath came in shallow gasps. From behind the tiles came a sound low and sharp, like a single note from an instrument no one had ever built. The room shifted. The corners bent subtly inward. It was making itself smaller. The floor groaned as if under strain. The walls pressing inward by degrees too subtle to measure but too steady to ignore. The bed's metal frame squealed against the tiles, pushed closer to the wall without anyone touching it. Anaya's back was now against the sealed door. She glanced at the handle, then at Amit. "It's not going to open, is it?" He didn't answer. The pull in his chest was worse now, like invisible hooks dragging him forward with every breath he took. His muscles trembled with the effort to resist. The black smear on the wall writhed, curling into new symbols that seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. Each pulse carried with it a whisper in his skull, fragments of the alien language he'd begun to understand against his will. "Don't look at them," Anaya hissed. "If you read them, you'll—" Too late. His eyes had traced the first curve, the next and the next. The meaning slid into him like a blade. Return to the mouth that gave you breath. The second limb emerged from the gap between tiles, thinner than the first, but tipped with something sharp that glistened in the light. The space between Amit and the wall was now barely 2 steps. Anaya pressed herself harder against the door. "If it touches you, it already has," Amit said, his voice not entirely his own. The wall shivered, the limbs reached, and Amit's feet took the first unwilling step forward. The second step came easier than the first. By the third, Amit wasn't sure whether he was moving himself or being carried forward by something unseen. The limb's tip brushed his shirt. A cold like molten ice seeped through the fabric, threading into his skin. His knees buckled, but instead of hitting the floor, he fell through. The wall wasn't solid. It wasn't even there. He landed in darkness so complete it felt like a physical substance, clinging to his skin and muffling the sound of his own breathing. Then shapes began to emerge, towers of bone-black stone, rising into an endless sky the color of bruised metal. Figures moved between the towers, tall, jointed, and slow, their faces hidden behind shifting veils of language, words forming and dissolving in midair, the same alien script now etched into Amit's mind. One of the figures turned toward him. The veil parted just enough for him to see the absence beneath. Not a face, not even emptiness, but a gap that led somewhere deeper. In the silence, the figure spoke directly into his thoughts. The voice was the same one he'd been learning to understand since his first death here. "The sentence is complete. The door will stay open now." Amit tried to step back, but his body was no longer obeying the same rules. He was already inside. From Anaya's side of the wall, Amit had simply vanished. 1 second he was there, the next his outline blurred, folded, and was gone, like a photograph burning from the edges inward. The gap where the tiles had fallen was wider now, the black flesh behind it glistening as though wet, but it wasn't the same slow pulse as before. It was breathing faster, like something excited. "Amit!" she shouted, slamming her fists against the sealed door behind her. Nothing. The metal didn't even vibrate. Then the smell hit her, damp earth and iron, as if rain had just fallen on rusted metal somewhere far away. It came from the gap, curling into the air in slow, deliberate tendrils. A voice pressed into her skull, low and patient, speaking in the same impossible language she'd heard Amit use, but she understood it this time. The other half of the sentence waits for you. Her knees nearly gave way. "No," she whispered aloud. The tiles around the gap began to rattle, one after another, loosening in a circle. The black flesh beneath stretched, widening the opening until it was almost the size of a doorway. From somewhere beyond, she thought she saw movement, towers, shapes, and a figure turning toward her, the shifting veil of words already parting. Amit's voice came from inside, faint but urgent. "Anaya, don't let it finish." But the pressure in the room grew unbearable. The shrinking walls gave her no choice. The doorway was ready. And it was hers. The opening pulsed, like a living wound in the wall, its edges flexing, black threads twitching toward her like the feelers of some patient predator. Anaya pressed herself against the sealed door, every muscle in her body screaming to move, but the air had thickened to the weight of water, every breath an effort. From the other side, Amit's voice came again, sharper now. "Anaya, if you step through, you won't come back the same. You won't come back at all." Her flashlight flickered. In the brief dark, she saw the towered city again. Only this time it was closer, as if the world beyond the wall had taken a step toward her. The voice inside her head deepened, the words slower, colder. "The sentence needs both voices. The door will not close until you speak." She shook her head violently. "No!" The room moved. Not just the walls. The floor tilted, subtly at first, then with a deliberate angle that made her slide forward. The gap widened, the black tendrils snaking out, brushing her ankles. Her scream caught in her throat as something cold wrapped around her wrist, not pulling, but leading. Amit's face appeared in the opening for a fraction of a second, but his eyes weren't his. The veil of words drifted across them, symbols flickering in and out like fireflies. "Anaya," he said in a voice that wasn't entirely human. "If you don't come willingly, it will take someone else." The tendrils tightened, the city loomed, and as her feet crossed the threshold, the door behind her unlocked with a soft, mocking click. They say the Suryanagar Compound is silent now, no lights in its windows, no sound behind its rusted gates. But those who live nearby swear that on certain nights, you can see a faint glow leaking from a single broken tile in the farthest building. Sometimes, if the wind dies just right, you might hear it, a voice, speaking words that make no sense, yet feel as though they've been carved into your bones since birth. The officials who sealed the compound insist it's nothing, just echoes, but echoes are only supposed to repeat what was already spoken, and the voice behind that wall is still building its sentence, still waiting for the second half. If you go inside, maybe it will choose you, maybe it won't, but if you hear your name whispered in that impossible tongue, it's already too late. You've been part of the story since before you were born. If you crave more stories that leave you looking over your shoulder long after the screen goes dark, subscribe to Dark Whispers, where the next door you open might never let you back out.